So now we are going to describe the cardiac cycle, so all the different events that happened here in the heart from an engineering perspective. And we are going to look at the changes in pressure and volume that happens in the left ventricle. So we are going to analyze the two processes of the cardiac cycle that are the diastole or relaxation and the systole or contraction just in the left ventricle. So to do that, we are going to use two graphs. So we are going to use a graph for pressure. So the pressure is in millimeters of mercury. It goes like from 120 or 150 max. And then here we have the volume. So let's make this a bit longer just in case. So the volume goes from 135 so this is milliliters, okay, to 50. Okay. And there are different processes, these two different processes that are the diastole and the systole. I'm going to represent them with different heart schematics. So we have here our heart icons, which is a lovely heart. So we are going to use this to explain the processes that are happening in the left ventricle and in the auricle. So first of all, what is going to happen is the process of diastole, which is the process of relaxation. Okay, so in the process of diastole, what is going to happen is that these valves that communicate the auricle and the ventricle, they are going to be open. And because they are open, the blood is going to flow from the auricle into the ventricle. Because of this flow, the ventricle is going to fill up. So we have an increase in volume. But the pressure is going to remain the same. And this is the first stage of the cardiac cycle. That is the stage of ventricular filling. Then what is going to happen, so we'll go back to our lovely heart. Okay. What is going to happen is that these valves, they are going to continue open, but then the auricles are going to contract. So here we have the contraction, and then these auricles, this contraction is going to eject all the blood that was left in the auricle into the ventricle. So we have this auricle contraction phase in which we have an increase in the volume, and we are starting to increase the pressure. So the auricular contraction phase. So what is going to happen next? So we go back to our heart schematic. Is that the valves that communicate the auricle and the ventricle, they're going to close down. So there is not going to be any more flow of blood into the ventricle from the auricle. So the blood or the volume is going to stay the same. And the pressure is going to go up. And because the volume stays the same, because as we see here, the valves are closed, so there's no changes in the volume of blood. This phase, this third phase, is called the isovolumetric contraction phase. And this is the start of the process of contraction that is called the systole. Okay. So what is going to happen next is that we go back to the heart. The valves that communicate the auricle and the ventricle, they are going to continue closed, but then the semilunar valves in the arteries are going to open. So then the blood here is going to be ejected, so the ventricle is going to contract, and the blood is going to be ejected into the arteries back to the systemic circulation in the case of the left ventricle. This is, so the ventricle contracts, systole happens, and the blood goes into the arteries, into the aorta, so the volume goes down. And the pressure will go a bit up and then down. So this increase in pressure is what makes for the valves, the semilunar valves, to open and allow for this blood to flow into the arteries. And this fourth phase here is called the ejection phase. So then what is going to happen is the pressure is going to continue to go down. So if we go back to our heart schematic, what is going to happen here is that both the valves that communicate the auricle and the ventricle, and the valves that communicate the semilunar valves that communicate the ventricle with the systemic circulation, the aorta in this case, is going to be closed. So this is also, the volume is not going to change because the blood is not going to flow. And because the volume doesn't change, this phase is going to be called the phase of isovolumetric relaxation. And the pressure finishes to go down. And then after this phase, it will be the end of the systole, and then we'll go back to the diastole, and the whole process will be repeated again. This process can be also represented by the electrocardiogram. So the electrocardiogram is going to measure the polarization of the walls of the heart, and it's going to be a representation of what is happening here. So in the electrocardiogram, EKG, we have different waves. So first, we have the P wave. So this is going to represent this auricular contraction or the polarization. Then we have the R, the Q, R, S portion. That is the polarization of the ventricle and the ejection. And finally, we have this T wave. That is going to be this full ejection of the blood, and at the start again of the diastole again. Okay, so we are finished here today. So we have seen the anatomy of the heart, and we have also seen the different cardiac cycle. I hope you enjoy it, and you'll join me for the next lecture. Thank you.